Good morning and welcome to Travels with Monkey Boy. Today is day 3 of our tour to Madagascar. Today is the big day, the national park, the home of the Indri lemur, the largest and maybe most famous lemur in the world. Well, until that stupid movie pushed the ringtail lemur to the front of the line. This is the day that will make the whole tour of the central region worth it. The uncomfortable night in the shack hotel room was over, and 5 hours of hiking in nature would cure all woes. As I wake up, I check my email and find out that our flight tomorrow morning to the fancy all-inclusive beach resort has been delayed 5 hours. One flight a day, so I should be happy that it's flying at all. The only problem is it has now shifted my plans to having most of Sunday at the beach to having most of Sunday in the capital city with nothing to do. At breakfast, 7 a.m., we meet with Jean-Claude and I tell him of the changes in flights and ask him if there's anything he has for a day tour of Antananarivo. And he very helpfully has a perfect tour for us, and he can then drop us off at the airport in the afternoon. We make the fairly substantial payment for the next day, and then he preps us for the hiking in the national park. Great news, he tells us as he introduces us to this day's naturalist. Instead of going to the national park, we will be going first to this new park, which is right next to the national park for the first hike. And then after that, we'll be going to a local park, which benefits the locals and not that stupid national park, which only benefits I don't know, the naturalists from Zimbabwe. All I hear is great news. We won't be going to Yellowstone Park because there's these other parks nearby that are even better. JC ensures us these parks have all the same animals and we are helping out everybody by going to them. And I smile through my aggravation and think, well, they're the experts. They wouldn't purposely ruin this tour just to save a few bucks, would they? Part number 1. We hiked for 2 hours and saw zero Indri lemurs. We saw zero orchids. I even asked the guide about it and said that the locals, and he said that the locals have found out that orchids are valuable for tourists, so they come to the parks and dig them up and sell them on the side of the road. We did come across some vanilla pods. Madagascar is famous for its vanilla. It is the most expensive and many believe the best vanilla in the world. But vanilla is not native to Madagascar. It comes from Mexico. Vanilla is an orchid, so it grows great in Madagascar once the French brought it over in the 1880s. But vanilla can only be pollinated by a special kind of bee, and those bees don't live in Madagascar, so they pollinate it by hand. Yes, the plant that the country is most famous for, the country with 12,000 unique plants and 700 unique orchids, is a Mexican orchid that requires human intervention in the plant sex life to grow here. Oh, Madagascar, must you get everything wrong? At one point, the guide spotted a beautiful bird, the blue koa. He heard it, took 2 steps down from the path into the jungle to spot it, and called us over. Danielle stepped next to him as there was only room for 2 people on this little ridge, and she saw it. I was 1 step higher up and couldn't see it. He kept pointing to it and saying, see, you can see it from here perfectly, which was great for him, but still obscured for me. I admired his determination not to give up his perfect viewing spot, and after a few minutes, the beautiful bird flew away and we marched on. Eventually, we came upon a couple of common lemurs, which really you can see everywhere, but we only saw them for a minute in the 2 hour hike, and none of the Indries. A 2 hour hike up and down the jungled hills of Madagascar was really lovely and green and jungly, but I was hoping for some spectacular nature experience to justify the drive, and it wasn't there. So we moved on. Part number 2. Ugh. It was not like a park at all. It was like the jungle that surrounded the village. The naturalist here was a local woman wearing flip-flops. We just walked through the village and into the jungle. She said she had seen Indiris earlier that morning, so was confident we wouldn't be disappointed. As we walked, you could hear the neighbors' dogs barking. You could hear car horns honking as we were just a few hundred yards off the road. We came across a couple of chameleons and a deadleaf gecko, and eventually saw 2 Indri lemurs way up in a tree. You can see him behind me in the picture. Another family group also obviously duped out of going to the national park, joined us as we cricked our necks, looking into the sun, and got a brief glimpse of the Indries. That was it. They brought us back to the car, and we began the 5-hour journey home. If you're sensing some if you're sensing some bitterness in my writing, honestly, Madagascar could not be worse at this tourism stuff if they tried. They have everything here to be absolutely glorious natural paradise, and they screw up every step of the way. Oh well, tomorrow we get the city tour with JC. I mean, how can you screw up a capital city tour, right? Note once again the great use of foreshadowing. Okay, now we got some pictures to share. No need for the map today. Okay, this was our breakfast area at the Shack Hotel. This is the traveler's palm. The leaves hold rainwater and the fronds grow east to west, pointing you the way home. Or that's what a natural told us, only to be told later on that that was nonsense and they grow whichever direction the wind blows. Elephant ear palm leaves, which were the size of sleeping bags. This is a pill bug. When you tap it, it rolls into a ball. I had a lot of fun making them do this. There were mushrooms everywhere. This is the Madagascar vanilla plant. This was the pretty bird I never got to see. There's Vanilla Pod's only fan page. These were called strawberry guavas, which we were told the lemurs love. Danielle actually loved this hike in the jungle. Very few mosquitoes. Moss everywhere too. Everything was very damp. This is the red clay that was soil all over Madagascar. Not good for growing cereal crops, but good for 12,000 other kinds of plants. There's the mushrooms. Found this fellow in a tree, looking at us backwards. We saw this female bird of paradise. We saw no males as they are easier for the locals to catch and eat. Here's a lemur-tailed palm, which was the closest we got to see a lemur on the first trip. They had lots of poor people on the drive home. Danielle gave them 20,000 ariary, which sounds like a ton, but is $5, which is coincidentally the average daily income for a family of 5 here. And that's it. Okay. It's the end for today. Thank you. Tomorrow, the flight to the island paradise. Thanks for coming.